A new MMORPG has hit the scene, and man is this one a doozy. So this is Aero, an anime style MMO where players can swap between action combat or tab target combat, and at a certain point players will be able to fly around the game's world to discover new places, multiple classes to choose from, and a hero villain arc to play through similar to World of Warcraft factions and many more MMO factions just alike. In today's video, I talk about my first impressions of the first few hours and try to be as critical as I can so anyone who is looking to get into Aero can get a major idea of what your first few hours would eventually look like. So immediately right out the gate, when you choose your server, you are tasked to choose hero or villain. In this playthrough, I've chosen to play as a villain to satisfy my horde cravings that goes way back in World of Warcraft. You do get 6 classes to choose from: warrior, samurai, the archer, the ranger, the wizard, and the witch, in which all of these classes of course focus on different aspects in fighting. Other than the initial classes you get to choose from, you do get to create your character, which it does have sort of good, but not the greatest. Like, I don't know really what to call it, but for simply creating your character, like, there's not too many hairstyles. It's not much you could do with creating your character. It's kind of lackluster, but sure, we'll roll with it. I know this can be a problem immediately for most players, but each class is gender locked, and you cannot choose to be a boy or a girl for each class. You must choose the specified gender for that class, and roll with that punch. For this playthrough, I chose a villain samurai. Feeling accomplished with this choice, I go and get ready to start, and I'm met with a cinematic cutscene. Now, let's talk about that cinematics. The cinematics gives me old school MMO vibes, like a flashback to the past, but even older MMOs look better and what's being offered to us right now by Aero. Now, once the cinematics is over, we're greeted to the tutorial, which I almost banged my head across my keyboard for this tutorial, and it was insane. No tutorial in 2022 should even be like this as of now. It's different back in the day where they were just trying to cut time, but for 2022, there's a lot of great MMOs that are coming out now or that are already released as of this year and last year. Phantasy Star Online 2, you got on the mobile side of things Wuthering Waves, you got Tower of Fantasy or Blue Protocol, hopefully whenever that releases. But still, you have a lot of expectations for MMOs when they release nowadays. What we're seeing now is insane. So the tutorial, which is pretty lackluster, and as in giving me just literally text of how to play the game without actually showing me how to play the game. Similar to Star Wars The Old Republic, you're told to use the quote-unquote H key as your hotkey map to know the controls of the game. Once again, just giving us flavored text instead of actually walking us through the game with a tutorial to know how to play or even utilize certain functions and scenarios. But no, you're only giving text, no demonstration or even how it works. And a new player standpoint or someone who might be new to MMOs, this tutorial would actually suck and it would not be the greatest. And at most point, most people probably already fall off right after here. Most tutorials in MMOs kind of give you very hot action, like immediately just action right off the gate in the tutorial, just to hook in players. To be honest with you, I wasn't hooked during this playthrough. Now, some people might be, some people may not care about what's the tutorial, but for anybody who is new trying to get into MMOs and they're looking up anime-based MMOs to play, and they come across Aero and they start this, I can already see how most people will already stop playing. The presentation was just not there. So after reading your flavor text of tutorial, you come across your very first kill quest mission, which you'll level up pretty much immediately, and you'll be introduced to the level system, which you can upgrade your strength, which levels up your attack and accuracy, and your dexterity levels up your defense and evasion. And lastly, your intelligence, which is still confusing to me even as I write out this entire script, it levels up your attack and accuracy as well. So I'm guessing the intelligence plays a part for the mages or the more magic based classes, but I still haven't seen much of a huge difference between the three. Now let's take some time to talk about the big elephant in the room and the graphics. The graphics in the world, which Aero Tales definitely doesn't give you modern MMO vibes. It definitely gives you early 2000s, but I do have to say I feel like even the old school MMOs still did it better. Even Wizard 101 can beat this game in pure graphics and story alone. The world just feels so empty, like there's a world with no soul, and it's just open plains of grass with mobs and a few major NPCs and no story really going through. Every quest has been just kill or collect. Most MMOs gives you a reasoning of why you're killing said creatures, like, oh, their creatures are taking over town. To be honest with you, I'm lost in the story and it makes literally no sense. I don't understand what's going on. Even reading the NPCs like text and seeing what they're talking about, like, it doesn't really give me a sense of urgency. Like, wow, I killed bees for honey, and I killed wolves, and it just, like, my first 2 hours was just agonizing pain. And speaking of missions, part of the next few missions is getting to know the different shop owners in the main hub area. Now, this is nothing too bad. A lot of MMOs really show, like, hey, this is this person, he sells this, and he sells this, and go on and so forth. So you at least get accustomed to where everybody's at, so when you need to go buy something, they're there. So that wasn't bad. After talking to the main NPCs in the game, I can say for sure the voice acting is definitely not the greatest, and it definitely feels a bit off. The game does very poorly explaining things that I kind of just found out now in the middle of playing, just randomly, that you can actually dash or dodge just by double tapping whatever direction you're in, the arrow keys, or WASD in this case. I found that out randomly because I was just spamming it. And I was just like, the game didn't tell me that. What about the huge flavor text at the beginning of the game? Now, there is one thing that I did notice, is that when you are switching from different like areas, you get a little loading screen, and the loading screen, it stated, oh, hey, you can dash or dodge. And that's another thing. Why am I finding out tips that you didn't show in the tutorial? That's my problem. Like, this game automatically is just not going to be the greatest just from that alone. Like, I'm finding out stuff later just through a randomly number generated different flavor text of only loading screens, and most time whatever I wasn't paying attention I didn't see. But I digress. The controls are wacky because clicking to have my cursor on screen seems like a better option when trying to speak to NPCs, because there's actually no way to talk to them when the camera is being controlled by your mouse instead of holding right click in the mouse when switching from 3D action to tap target. If you guys can find out a way for you to be able to talk to NPCs while you're in the tab target mode, please let me know, because I couldn't even access the NPCs. There's no press E to talk the quest. There's no anything of that nature. Like the HUD, the UI, it's just not there, non-existent, doesn't feel good. I just had a hard time. The combat is another thing I want to talk about. The combat is just a mess, and I really don't like the way the combat feels. Like, there's no weight behind your attacks. It feels like I'm whacking at air, like it feels like there's no soul in this combat. The kill quest doesn't make any sense to me at all, so I'm level 5 and one of the mobs I have to kill is higher level than me, which makes the quest longer since it takes forever to kill these mobs. And I'm running out of healing items, so I have to resort to waiting it out of combat so my health can heal. Agonizing pain. The drops for quests are also insane, like it takes me forever to collect one drop for a quest after killing 3 to 5 mobs, which makes grinding out things much more longer and takes more time for little reward. After a gruesome amount of time, we come across our very first dungeon, which honestly I feel like this is the tip of the iceberg, and it kind of spells how the game will feel for the rest of the game all the way until max level, I think, which is level 90, since they raised the level cap. So you come across the first dungeon, the Temple of Lunar, and by far this is the worst dungeon I've ever been in. The design of it is bad, all enemies are still tanky because of leveling in this game. The first boss is just as worse, none of my attacks does nothing to him, and on top of that, the game is still active during a cutscene, so I was being attacked by mobs while the boss is being showcased, and it happens every single time. You enter the boss room, and what makes it even more bad is just the simple fact the game just tells you, hey, This quest is available for players who are level 7. Well, look at me, Chaos is level 7, and just for me or any other player to find out later by getting clapped multiple times by mobs or even the boss, you're not ready, and once again the game does a horrible job at explaining anything about itself. Had to take a breather there. Level locks also suck. Oh man, do you love level locking. Since I'm fighting mobs in my level range, I will get gear, which, would you look at that. I cannot use it till I reach the specified number, like for example, I'm level 7, and I'm receiving my first new weapon I can actually use, which is level 9. I can't use it until I get to level 9, and I also randomly receive the mount I can't use till I'm level 30 just for joining the game, as I read the little description to say how I got this mount. Even my abilities are heavily locked, and I only receive one ability till I get my new one at level 10, and then from there I have to get all the way to level 15 and so on and so forth. Like, the level of scaling in this game is insane. Like, I need them to fix that if this game is going to last any more than what it already is. And this is my last attempt at beating my first dungeon, but in order to fight him again, I'm going to have to upgrade my training gear, since the game has a hard time giving me new items like equipment and such, which is very vital to help me progress the main game. And after your first dungeon, you get set up with a bunch of talking NPC quests. And I feel like right from here, right from the ending of this first dungeon, it will be rinse and repeat in a constant cycle. Like, I know that's a kind of thing for most MMOs, a lot of MMOs, but at least make it fun in that case. Aero Tales definitely needs a lot of work in 2022, standards for modern MMOs. I have low hopes for Aero Tales, but I don't always like to dispel any games. I wish the games can flourish, and it has its own niche. Hopefully it does get better, as it is currently out right now on both Android and PC, so it's hitting both the PC market and the mobile market. As for the early access part, which, keep in mind this game is in early access, the developers Anisaga states that it will take at least a year, with aspirations to add a new castle war, new weapons, new costumes, new pets, more crafting items, and more importantly, quote unquote, more fun, which I don't know what that means, but hopefully somehow it gets better after a few months. With the state of the game how it is now in early access, I don't know much else they could really do with Aero Tales. Most early access games kind of follow into it. Sometimes they, at the end of early access games, it's like a complete 180. But for most of the time, the game kind of stays the same. So let's see the state of the game after a few months and see if it lives or not. Or will the game get a major turnaround and be the brand new biggest MMORPG in a year's time? I doubt it. Maybe. And if you want to know similar first impressions on MMORPGs, then head over to the playlist that will be on the left side. And if you want to try out a new mobile RPG, then check out the card on the right. And as always, it's been your host, KSTTV, here at Chaotic Inc., signing out. Peace.
Make a manifest. I don't sleep, that's so weak, don't plan to rest. I'm from a hood where you die if you don't pack a vest. No culinary degrees, but whipping crack the best. Chefing, hard times taught lessons. Praying every night to pull up in park Benzes. What's my home is what you call trenches. You wouldn't last a day seeing life through all lenses. It's all tension, no sun, and rain and plenty. Full-time job, still can never make a penny. I ain't